Any thoughts? I don't see any hands. Okay. Yes, please.
Yeah, mine keeps going away, but then it's also suggested in meditation that it's like an open window. Thoughts will come and go, let them be there and let it go. But there should be one focused Swami. Swami is in the center of all the thoughts.
Yeah.
So
So that's a great point. That mind does go everywhere.
yeah.
And it's very, very hard to control it. And therefore we have to decide on, okay, do I want to keep taking Swami's name? Do I want to watch my breath? What is it that I want to hold on to so that it becomes easy to let these thoughts go? Yes?
So 9 minutes seem like eternity.
Yes, absolutely. I know. 9 minutes seems like eternity. And what Jack Hislop would do is he would do it for 2 months. 2 months at a stretch. And I can tell you one story about him which is fascinating. So he was now very close to Mahesh Yogi, who was the person who started TM. And Jack Hislop was probably like the number 2 in the United States for TM. And he was handling a lot of the activities that the TM people were having him do. And he would tell them, TM is the way. It is the way that meditation should be. This is the way to better peace, to God, to more insight. But then after some point he started thinking, I'm just parroting these words. And I'm not really, do I know this for a fact? And he thought to himself, not really. So what he did was, he did an interesting experiment. He went to the Catalonia Islands, right off the coast of LA. And he went to a hotel. And he said to these people in the hotel, I'm going to lock myself in that room for 10 days. Okay? All you will need to do is you need to get me my food, put it outside my door, and when I'm done with my dishes, I'll put them outside, you take them. But nobody disturbs me for 10 days. Okay? No calls, nothing. Just leave me alone. And so he did this for 10 days. And he recounts this experience in his books. And what he said was he did get some very interesting states. He had a lot of peace, and he could experience that his senses had fallen off. There was no senses. It's like being in a sensory deprivation tank. And he had some incredible experience. But at the end of it, he realized that this was not it. The moment he came out of that meditative state, he was back, life again, back at him with all its fury. So what appealed to me about John Hislop's method was that he didn't take anything on face value, right? He didn't say, this is it, and he tested it. And very soon after that, he left the TM movement. Okay. And he thought, maybe this is not my thing. And he eventually went to Swami after having searched for 25 years. And he went to every major spiritual teacher, and he tried out their paths in the best possible way he could. And he then came to Swami. And he recounts in his books that when he came to Swami, he had already had 25 years of experience with all these kinds of methods. He had reached a lot of interesting states which are stated in our Puranas and in Buddhist texts. But then there was no love in him. There was that feeling of warmth was missing. And when he saw Swami for the first time, he could feel that there was this butterfly in his heart, which was beating. That was the feeling he describes. And he said that was the most precious feeling of my interaction with Swami. He could make my heart a warm heart, not an intellectual Western heart, but a warm heart. And that was Swami who did that for him. So again, a great seeker. And it's very valuable to listen to people like Hislop because he's coming from a place of practice. So we have a talk here, which I'm hoping I can play. But any what happened here. I have some glitch here. Okay. Anyway, before it gets back, I wanted to share a story about what we did in the Boston Center. I know this is sounding more like a workshop and less like an experience talk, but I thought it will be useful for us to share because when we are so many in number, we are almost 50 today. There is great power in numbers, right? If 50 of us can be in that one room and think about Swami without any distraction, it has an effect. It has a very tangible effect, and that effect shows. So some of the feedback that we received from our members who came to this was that, yes, indeed, we found it extremely useful, and we would love to do it again. And so this is going to be part of our events, just like our Akhanda Bhajan, just like all these celebrations that we do. We are going to actually have 6 of these events once every 2 months in the Boston Center, and it'll culminate with a 2.5-day silent retreat. So that, that is also. So let's hear from Jack Islam.
Well, they rejected them and sent them back to the merchant. He wouldn't take them to use as gifts through those walls. Who can see through those walls? Oil and the minerals, and the vegetation uses that for its growth. So the consciousness makes a quantum leap and becomes the consciousness of the vegetable. Then the vegetation is eaten by animals. They survive on the vegetation. And consciousness then makes another quantum leap from the vegetable to the animal. And then we humans eat animals. Animals become part of our flesh and blood, part of the mind even. In fact, Swami says that this tremendous expansion of population in the world, which is giving headaches and heartaches to so many countries trying to figure out how to deal with it, comes largely because of the worldwide custom of eating animals. All over the world, we eat animals, and these animals then come into the human birth, more and more and more and more human beings. So from the animal then, there's again a quantum leap into mankind. And in mankind, then awareness, very acute awareness arises. And we are aware of ourselves. We are aware that we are alive. And therefore can start to think about our lives and try to distinguish the false from the true. The animal, Swami says, is alive, but it doesn't know that it's alive. It doesn't know life. It is alive and lives, but doesn't know it's alive, and therefore can't make inquiry. Whereas we know we are alive, and then can start the process of inquiry. Then the next step in evolution is from human to superhuman. And from superhuman to the spiritual, and from the spiritual to the divine. So I asked Swami, well, Swami, stone, vegetation, animal, man, we can all see, we all know. But how about this next step? The superhuman, who's superhuman? We don't see it, superhumans. Are those people, Swami, up in the Himalayas mountains, who can walk on water and walk through a mountain and levitate themselves and fly away to other planetary systems and so on? So I says, no. Those are just people trying to get liberated. They're not superhumans. They're just human beings trying to get liberated. Well then, Swami, who's superhuman? He said, superhuman people are like, then he named several of the ancient saints, Vashishta, and so on. And he said, those people have completely finished with human life. They don't have any desires or any cravings or any fears, don't have any of those aspects of human life which cause us to engage in actions which then creates our human world. They are quite separate from all those aspects of craving, fear, hatred, and so on. So they've totally finished with human concerns. And any action that they engage in is for the benefit of humanity.
Okay, so Hislop talks about very interesting things in this talk. He talks about, as we are saying, the quest of the self. So he talks about where you end up if you were indeed to follow this path. And he talks about what are the characteristics of that. And he talks about each stage extremely well. So I would strongly encourage you to have a look at this and go through this if you wish to. And you will learn a great deal just like we have as well. Any thoughts about this? No? Okay, I'm not going to come between you and lunch. I'll keep it short. So, one thought that I thought I should share with you was, see, Hislop comes from a very interesting background, right? He's put in a lot of work into what we call as Jnana Yoga. Right? He has had many years of meditation. But in the end, he settled on Namasmarana. And he would do Namasmarana constantly. I can recall a story which I was told by Dr. Sandweiss when we were visiting him. So Dr. Sandweiss is a psychiatrist. He lives in San Diego. He was very close to Dr. Hislop. Some of you might have read his book. So he was talking about how Jack Hislop passed away, his final moments. By the end of his life, he was living more or less like an ascetic. And all he was doing Namasmarana the whole day. Okay. And at the end of it, he talked to Sandweiss about how hard it was. And so they were talking, and the last few days, he was sharing some experiences with Sandweiss. And he was saying, see, because of my training of 30 plus years, it was very hard for me to do Namasmarana. It was boring. It took me so long to gain some happiness in it. But then he ended by saying that once I started getting the hang of it, after several days and weeks, every time I would say Swami's name, it was like sucking on a nice chocolate. It was so sweet. It was almost as if every name that you say would give you that beautiful, sweet feeling. And so everything else, all the pain and the worries and all of the things that our mind has us do will vanish because you can gain that sweetness. And so his very end was so peaceful and beautiful. There were 35 people chanting Swami's name. He was there in the middle and they were all chanting Namasmarana. And so it was a beautiful testament to how he lived his life. He dedicated his life to the method of Namasmarana. And at the end, he left with Namasmarana on his lips and of all the people around him as well. So there was something very beautiful about that incident, and I was quite deeply inspired by it. And so that's his method. Now, Dr. Raja Reddy's method was more of dhyana. So one of our students went to visit Raja Reddy in Bombay. And his wife said, Raja Reddy's inside, and please wait for him, because he is in his dhyana. And he waited for an hour. He waited for 2 hours. He waited for 3 hours. Raja Reddy didn't come out. And then, as Dr. Rao said, it felt like an eternity. He was sitting on that couch for 3 hours. And then Raja Reddy comes out. And he says, I apologize. But when I am in that room, doing my Soham meditation, time just has no meaning. So there is a huge gap between when we begin and where we end. When we end and when we are probably at the level that Mr. Raja Reddy was able to get at, then time has no meaning. You are so involved in this, you are so happy, you are in such a blissful state. But again, it takes effort. It takes a certain kind of effort and work ethic to get there. It's not going to happen overnight, right? Now, Raja Reddy also had some interesting thoughts on where all he would do meditation. He would do it while driving. Swami sitting behind, and he would be driving and he was doing his meditation and namasmara. So the message that I'm trying to get across is that we need to decide on a sadhana and go with it. Some of us love bhajan, and I'm going to end with this. So this is the final 5 minutes that I'm going to take. But then one question that I had personally was, how long does it take before bhajan gives me the kind of peace that I am looking for? Because when I was in the bhajan group, it was like a pressure cooker. It was such a stressful experience that I can't tell you how stressful it was. It was almost like getting a heart attack. I've not had a heart attack, thankfully, but I can imagine how much it was, because there is 5,000 people outside, right? And you make a small mistake, and then Swami is going to be not too happy with you, and these people around you are not going to be happy with you either. So I was thinking, bhajan, is that really a peaceful thing? It seems not to be the case. I'm constantly thinking about whether I'm in tune, whether the tabla guy is playing properly, whether this fellow is doing their job right, whether Swami is looking at me. So it didn't feel the right thing. And then, so one day I had the opportunity to talk to Mr. Suresh Wadkar. Some of you might know, he's a brilliant singer. So we would go to his room, and he had dedicated his life to music. So we would sit there with him, and while he was practicing, and we would ask him questions. Okay, so you've dedicated your life to music. So the one question we had was, all right, so how long do you listen to a song, or how many times do you sing something so that you can understand it well? So I thought maybe he's going to say 5 times, 10 times. He said 350 times. 350 times is how many times he listens. He listens to something 350 times and then practice countless hours. Okay? And then he said at some point, the song vanishes. There's no song. It is completely natural. It's like it flows from you. And at that point, you're not thinking if Suresh Wadkar is singing well, if he's making a mistake, if the tabla guy is making a mistake. It's not about that. It's none of that. It's a very important way to do sadhana. It has to come so naturally that you're unaware of what's happening around you. So I thought maybe I'm going to put Suresh's thought to test. Let me see, does this really make sense? Because he seems to think that this is the way to keep on doing it at a point, and at a certain point, all thoughts vanish. There's only you and God. You are able to visualize God in the silence that follows. And so I put that to test. So one day I was sitting in my room and I started singing a bhajan. I did this for a good 4 hours. Okay, 3.5 to 4 hours. When I was starting the bhajan, it felt like, oh, I didn't sing that note properly. What is it, Keshava? Or is it Keshav? What is Madhava? What was it? And so questions like that would come to my mind. Then after like 15, 20 times, those questions vanished. Then I would start thinking, what am I going to tell my advisor on Monday? Is he going to be happy with what I did? Or is he going to say, go back to the lab and do this again? Right? That happened. After 30, 35 or so, my parents, oh, I didn't call my mom. What's going to happen? Started feeling guilty about that. And then after a certain time, all of that vanished. Okay? About an hour and a half into that process, it was a Vitthala bhajan. And I can tell you, it was the most beautiful experience. It was an amazing experience because there was no thoughts. I could actually see Vitthala's statue, clear as day, in my mind. But it took me 1.5 hours to get there. 1.5 hours of dealing with my mom talking in my head, my advisor telling me what to do, and me thinking about X, Y, and Z. So the message I'm coming to is that for us to really go within and to feel a certain kind of silence and to communicate or commune with Swami, there is a certain work ethic that's necessary. And these devotees, these old devotees, have shown us the way. They have dedicated their life to a particular method. John Hislop did it with Namasmarana, Raja Reddy did it with Dhyana, and there are several other people who do it in other ways. But the common theme in all of that is the work ethic. To get close to God and to commune with Him, you need to have silence, both within and without. And therefore, it is necessary for us to have that opportunity to do it, not just by ourselves, but together as well. So hopefully, we'll get more opportunities like this, where we can all be together and be quiet and learn from each other. There are some of us who have had many years of such experiences. We've been quiet. And those of us who have not had that experience can learn from you. Just by sitting in that room, we can actually gain. Some people have strong concentration. Just by sitting in that room with them and thinking about Swami, you can find peace. So with that, I'm going to end. Again, I'll talk little bit about my experiences in the afternoon. But if I want to end with something, it's that we in the Boston Center have had great success sitting quietly together and taking Swami's name. Not doing bhajan, not doing anything, but just being quiet. And it has been a fascinating experience. And if you guys have the opportunity, try it out for half a day. And it'll be something that is another activity to add to the center. So with that, Saram, and we'll catch you on the other side of lunch.